Welcome to our crop journal by Kaylee, Brendan, and Emily. So, this semester, our crop journal became the heart of everything we did in HORT 4050. It helped us keep track of every step as we cared for our greenhouse crops and worked through the challenges that came our way. We started with trays of poinsettias and a variety of other plants, and from day one, it was all about making thoughtful decisions. And this journal gave us a place to document it all. The crop journal wasn't just about staying organized, but it really showed us how all the little details come together to grow the healthy, thriving plants that we sold at the plant sale. So, this semester has been a great hands on experience full of problem solving and learning what it takes to run a greenhouse. We're excited to share what we've learned with you now.
And we started off this semester in this class on the very first day of labs on August 14th by potting up poinsettia plugs that we got. So we got 8 different cultivars, and each cultivar had a tray of 75 poinsettia plugs. And we took each of those plugs and we put one per 6-inch pot, and we separated them on the benches into different cultivars. Now, for each cultivar, we made sure at least one pot had a label with the cultivar's name, and for the rest of those pots, we used colored labels to indicate which cultivar it was. And we went ahead and pinched those poinsettias on August 28th to ensure that the plant would fill out rather than just keep growing tall and leggy. And the rest of the plants, the rest of the perennials, we received from Jane's greenhouse on September 6th, and then we potted them up on September 9th. So, for those plants, we got, like I said, 8 different cultivars of poinsettias. So we got Freya Marble, Freya Pink, Freya White, Noblesse, Red Ribbons, Red Jewel, and an interesting one called H759JA. And for the perennials, we got Hosta, Bee Blossom, or Gora, 2 different cultivars of Euchra, Isadum, Gerbera Daisy, Dianthus, Snapdragon, Coreopsis, Monstera, 2 different types of Echinacea, and Hellebore. And like I said, we got those perennials on we potted them up on September 9th. They also arrived in 75 plug liners, and we put these into square 8-inch pots with one plant in each pot. Now, the only exception to this is hellebores because they arrived ready to sell, so we just kept them in the little square pots they were already in.
All right, for our fertilizer section, we would mix this by a group, and the plants would get their nutrients through a drip line irrigation system, and this was run for 2.5 minutes initially, then changed to 4 minutes, and the plants overall um, got nutrients in an efficient manner.
So, an important part of keeping a greenhouse clean and preventing pest and disease outbreaks is sanitation. So, this includes removing dead plants, removing dead leaves, browning leaves, and deadheading flowers. So, deadheading flowers, especially, but also removing any of that dead debris, helps keep away botrytis. And it also, deadheading the flowers, helps remove any habitat for thrips and allows the plant to put more energy into vegetative growth rather than flowering and reproduction.
All right. Our overall pH in our greenhouse was okay, and the EC towards the last 2 months of the growth cycle was off. It may have been because of improper fertilization calculations, and or improper or watering, and yes, so went pretty well.
So, now we're going to talk about the conditions in the greenhouse. And basically, the greenhouse was set up to keep the plants in the best possible conditions, and the temperature control system made it super easy to manage. When it hit 75 degrees Fahrenheit, the roof vents opened and the fans turned on, as well as the cooling system kicked in to keep things from overheating. If it dropped to 65 Fahrenheit, the heater turned on to keep it cozy. The relative humidity was set at 70%, which kept the air nice and consistent for the plants. And another cool thing was that the west facing windows, which gave the plants a ton of afternoon sun. The benches on the far west got the most light, so we made sure to put the drought tolerant plants there since they could handle it better. And basically, overall, these little adjustments made a big difference and kept everything running smoothly in the greenhouse.
Now, of course, despite our best efforts to keep the greenhouse clean and sanitized, we did encounter pests. So, the most consistent pest throughout the semester was fungus gnats, and that was because of fairly frequent overwatering and wet soil conditions. We monitored them through yellow sticky cards, and we controlled them through pesticides, which we'll go into a little bit later. Another pest that plagued us were thrips. Now, thrips were mainly found in the dianthus and the snapdragons due to the dead flower heads still being on there and creating a nice little habitat for them. But once we started deadheading the flowers and taking off all of those blooms, and once we sprayed a pesticide, of course, they were controlled and they did not return, thankfully. Now, two more pests that we encountered, which weren't as big of problems, were whiteflies and spider mites. The whiteflies were found in the poinsettias, but they were a very small population, and once pesticide was sprayed, they were pretty controlled. The spider mites were only found on the Gora, and that's because the Gora were the only plants that were truly drought stressed. They were found in fairly large populations on the east side of that bench of those Goras, but once they had a pesticide sprayed, they were fairly well controlled, and they didn't really pose a huge problem after that. Now, for diseases, there weren't a whole lot of problems. There were minimal issues here and there. For example, there was powdery mildew found on the coreopsis, but it was fairly well controlled with some pesticide. And another one is the botrytis on the Gerber daisies. So we found like a fuzzy gray mold growing in the flowers, but that's mainly because the fairly old daisy flowers were being left on the plant and allowed to start decomposing, which attracted that botrytis. Now, once we started deadheading those daisies and we sprayed the little pesticide, we didn't see it return. And finally, the last disease was a bacterial disease in the poinsettias called the bacterial stem rot. Now, we only saw a handful of plants at most affected by this, but those plants were complete losses that we had to toss the entire plant. So, thankful that the disease only affected a couple of plants because otherwise it would have been devastating to our crops.
For the production issues, pests and equipment being used improperly were the main issues. And the irrigation system being turned off on one day may have caused some of our measurements to be off. And also some of the contamination during the potting up could have caused some diseases slash pests to occur later on.
Next up is pesticide treatment. So, this semester's spray log really highlights the effort it takes to keep plants healthy and pests under control in the greenhouse. From battling root diseases to managing pesky insects and mildew, it was a combination of preventative care and problem solving as different issues arose. So, here's a quick rundown of what we tackled. First, I'm going to mention the root disease treatments, where early on we addressed the root issues with drenches of Cleary's 3336 and Subdue Max to strengthen the plant's foundations. And when it came to cleanliness, Zero Toll was our first go to for sterilizing benches and drip lines. This ensured a clean and disease free environment. Next up is pest control, and to combat thrips and whiteflies, we relied on Protea, Tristar, and Talus. And Pyranthrum TR targeted fungus gnats, while Safari and Shuttle ensured thrips, whiteflies, and spider mites stayed in check to help us manage that. Mildew defense, Compass O handled the powdery mildew, keeping the leaves fresh and healthy. And then when it came to growth management, Bonsai was used as a PGR drench to keep the plants at the perfect size, which we saw that they were for the plant sale. And as far as making it stick, capsule was frequently used to ensure sprays spread evenly and worked effectively. So overall, this spray log was a mix of trial and error, and it taught us how to balance plant care with pest control. And I think this semester has been a fun challenge, and documenting everything was a great reminder of how much thought goes into every decision. This class has given us a valuable hands on industry knowledge that we can carry forward in our careers, definitely.